The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
12 minutes now after 8. A very good morning to you and a warm welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Well, then, we've been talking about it the whole morning. Lots of SMSs coming through, emails as well. Government spending 102 billion rand on consultants between 2008 and 2011 because of lack of skills. Now, Deputy Auditor General Kimi Makwetu is here with me this morning to shed light on the investigation that was conducted by the AG and, of course, give us some of the results and the findings of the particular investigation there. Deputy AG, a very good morning to you. I really thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Xolani, and good morning to all the SAFM listeners.
Thanks indeed. Before I even ask you to respond to some of the reports around this matter, let me just read some emails. I've been going through a whole lot of SMSs right throughout the morning, but perhaps time for some emails now. There's one from Benson Mapangwana in Mangaung who says, I know of many friends in Bloemfontein who registered companies only to get tenders from provincial government as consultants. Needless to say, these people are not even qualified to provide such work, but it's all in the name of empowering allies. That's Benson Mapangwana in Mangaung. Another email here came through exactly on the same matter. It came through from Peter Lawton, who says, our government wastes public money every single day and does so while denying it. The state's profligate wastage of taxpayers' money on consultants has been known for years. That government staff and employees were already paid but could not understand the work that they were supposed to do has been common knowledge for years. The fact that more money has been spent by the Auditor General to tell us these things is farcical. Well, the Deputy AG will respond to that. Every departmental head or departmental office manager knew that this was going on in their area as they were bringing in these consultants, but it was denied by each to each other. Newspaper reported it. Existing longer-standing state employees spoke about it, but the government quashed the information, so it continued. That's from Peter Lawton, an email sent to us a little earlier on this matter. Lots of these emails, and I'll make some time read some of them a little later on as well. Give me or send me an SMS, by the way. It's 34701 34701. But according to some of the highlights of the report released yesterday, let me just tell you some of these highlights. Consultants appointed to manage other consultants on 9 projects for the Department of Correctional Services. Excess payments of 18.5 million rand to consultants by the same department. Full payment of more than 11 million rand was made for a consultant overseeing a project that has still not been completed 3 years after the deadline. Correctional Services awarded a project to the consultant who compiled the project's needs assessment. The Department of Defense paid 134 million rand to consultants without supporting documents. A consultant claimed 29 million rand for breach of contract due to non-performance by the Department of Defense. Now, Deputy AG, this is shocking. Would you agree?
Xolani, thanks very much for highlighting those specific issues. I think what's important to put across right up front is that this performance audit that we did was largely focused on assessing whether there is indeed value for money that is received by government for the money spent on various projects.
Yeah.
And we specifically looked at this because we believe that from the work that we've done over the years as part of our annual financial statements audit, this was a critical area in terms of supply chain management. Mm-hmm. So I think the comments that have come through to a certain extent do point in the right direction. And the reason we are doing this, among others as well, and I think there's a comment coming through that says that we spend money
investigating what is obvious.
What is obvious, yes. But our view is that we have to do this because the less of it comes into the public domain with more and more facts and analysis, the less action we might see. We are hoping here that if we do this work continuously, regardless of the time spent in it, it will point to a number of other issues that become relevant for fixing finances.
And perhaps what we need to do, though, is to take a step back, go back to the beginning of this investigation by yourselves, this assessment by yourselves. What was the reason behind it? Why did you have to do it?
When we look back to the years we've been releasing audit reports, we did an analysis of about 5 years of history and said what exactly are the intricate problems that are coming out in various provinces and various national departments and in municipalities. And the area of growth in the cost of consultants over the years was very clearly going up. And so we felt that in addition to having reported already in some instances on the matter of irregular expenditure, as you would know from the reports that Auditor General releases every year, we report on issues of unauthorized expenditure, we report on issues of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. In essence, if I shorten the explanation on this one, we were wanting to give a specific face to those conclusions. So now if you look at irregular expenditure, part of it has got a face in the use of consultants. If you look at issues of wasteful and fruitless expenditure, there are elements of it that sit in the area of use of consultants. So in essence, I think this is a continuation of the journey that we're on, because here in the performance audit side of things, we are able to see what actually happens in the workshop rather than what happens on the road.
But explain something to me, Mr. Makwetu, if you can. Why would it be irregular expenditure? Why would it fall under irregular and or wasteful expenditure?
There are examples of in the report which listeners could also access from the AG website, agsa.co.za, where procurement processes were flouted. So if you don't follow the prescripts of the law, that becomes irregular. If you did not have the budget to spend on the activities that you spend, it becomes unauthorized. If you spend money and you did not use what was intended to be received, despite the fact that you have it, it then becomes wasteful.
So in other words, you uncovered corruption that was done through the use of consultants.
Well, we haven't really stretched ourselves to be able to present evidence that categorically says this is corruption. But what is laid out in our report gives a sense that in an environment where you do not have strong internal controls and that you do not have rigor in respect of executing those controls, in respect of making sure that you have oversight structures working closely. And when I talk about oversight structures, we're saying the internal auditors of a department or any agency ought to be the ones that are on the coalface, that are able to detect these things and be given the necessary support and the strength that they require to do this job. Because if that is weak, then everybody else that deals with that environment is likely to catch on the fact that if I submit an invoice, it's likely to be authorized even though I have not fully delivered. So our emphasis in this report, in essence, is really to say this amount is big, but it is likely to be smaller if those rigorous controls are put in place.
But talking about those controls, and a lot of people have been SMSing me and saying, but Treasury is supposed to allow or reject the requests for the use of consultants.
But you see, the reality of the situation, Kolani, is that if I am a head of department in a particular agency and I have given up, for argument's sake, on people that are working in my area, and because they're not delivering on the recruitment, as an example, I'm likely to accept the fact that I must go get an agency outside. Now, when you make that decision, it's still within your authority. You don't have to refer it up the line because it's part and parcel of managing your day-to-day operations. So what you are saying is that when that decision gets made, some level of rigor needs to go into it so that there is somebody within the same establishment who is able to say, no, we are not going to go this route because we already are spending money. As one caller has said, there's a fixed cost of employment that sits in a particular department. Those people get paid every month, so there's no justification for allowing them to continue the payment cycle while they are not delivering what they are employed for, and then go out and seek the services of an external provider, because now you are doubling up the cost of that.
But isn't that the difficulty? The difficulty is in establishing whether the consultants were doing the jobs that are supposed to be done by people already employed, or they were bringing additional capacity.
Well, of course, there are those that are bringing additional capacity. They are doing their level best, among others, we have observed in some areas. You'll see, for example, in areas like the Department of Health, there's no doubt an established rigor that is in place within the Department of Health in managing those service providers. So those service providers do deliver what they are expected to do. But what happens at the end of it, in terms of closing out on that project, is a different story, because you'll find a whole set of recommendations that were aimed at fixing an existing problem But if nothing is acted upon them, you are likely to go back next year to find a similar service provider. Of course, a service provider will not say no when the people that they consciously advised to change certain things have not acted on them. They will still come back because it is not their fault that the stuff that they put on the table was not put in place.
Right. I'll open the lines here. 0891 104 208. 0891 104 208. I'll also take emails at gwalax@sabc.co.za. gwalax@sabc.co.za. SMS me at 34701. 34701. Who are the biggest culprits, Mr. Makwethu?
Well, we see a number of departments like water affairs, environmental affairs, among others, that have got a concentration of these weaknesses. We've examined 6 areas in respect of the potential weaknesses that come with lack of controls, and those ones are prevalent, among others, in those departments, and of course, correctional services is among them. As I said earlier on, health has painted a picture that is much brighter than the rest in terms of the 8 that we looked at. So even though health has got a brighter picture, but that picture is also not complete. There are certain gaps there that they also need to address, which they have committed to deal with.
I see defense, for instance, has been quoted a number of times where they were paying 134 million rand to consultants without supporting documents and so on. Surely that is a contravention of the law. How do you pay 134 million rand to consultants without supporting documents? I mean, those are basic requirements.
That's the point I made earlier, Kolani, regarding the management of documents. If you look at the previous regularity audits, this is one issue that Auditor General has highlighted over a number of years, that the discipline to keep evidence for the transactions that have been entered into is still lacking in a number of areas. We've pointed to this in the area of municipalities, and we still see it in the national departments.
But what is difficult to understand about it is it pure corruption, or is it because people do not know what to do?
We don't know the answer to that yet, but seemingly the discipline to keep controls, because the issue of keeping documentation is part of keeping controls in an environment. So the conclusion about whether it was in the intention as to why this had to be the case, we haven't tested the intention, and that's why we're not wanting to go that far in terms of making. But
do we not have checks and balances in place to ensure that those who do not comply with the regulations, the prescripts of the law, then are dealt with in a particular way?
Well, there's enough that the National Treasury and the Department of Public Service and Administration has prescribed in that regard. And I guess the reality is that if there are certain prescribed rules that need to be observed, if anybody doesn't observe them and there is no consequence that follows that deviation, the likelihood is that the deviation becomes the standard.
In your assessment, though, do you get a sense that there has been consequences at all for some of the people that have unnecessarily brought in consultants?
Well, some of the departments have started acting. Once we elevated some of these issues, we've seen some departments taking steps to stop some of these services and dealing with the people that were managing them. So those are at the moment still an exception, but we think that it will help if it can become a rule across the board.
Let's take some calls. Justin in the Eastern Cape. Good morning to you, Justin.
Hi, Colin, and to your guests. Thanks for having me on. I just wanted to make comment in relation to, I categorically agree with the gentleman that policies and procedures are required for control, but equally the correct personnel. I've spotted municipalities, small and large, in the Eastern Cape, and I'm talking about on the engineering side of consulting. I know that's not the only realm of consulting, but there's a huge lack of professionalism within municipalities where maybe 12 years ago we were designing almost everything. Now I haven't actually seen anyone design anything, and I've been working in this space for maybe the last 3 years. Nothing is designed in-house anymore, and that's because the personnel actually are afraid to do it or aren't given the scope to do it, maybe by more senior personnel who aren't technical. And I think that's where a lot of consulting goes out. And unfortunately, the consulting industry, not all, but has over-scoped projects. And I think that's the biggest thing I've seen, over-scoping of projects. The project is valid in a sense, but the magnitude of the project is doubled because there's nobody of equal technical capacity in-house to control that.
Justin, thank you very much. Mr. Makwetu will respond to you in a short while. Let me go to John. John is in Woodback. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Kolani. Good morning to your guest.
Hi.
You know what we find is that, take for instance roads, they'll give a certain BEE company a certain area of road to do. Now they'll go and count those holes. By the time that BEE company comes to actually do the job, another 10 holes have materialized. So I can't see why they can't just use common sense and say, right, that stretch of road, let's say, for example, 10 kilometers, you will repair every single hole on that 10 kilometers and you'll be paid so much. Do you want it or don't you sort of want it? Because what happens, they'll be repairing the so-called holes that they've been allocated, and right next to those holes, there'll be more holes. So the cars will still be dodging around and being dangerous.
Okay.
So I just cannot see their pathetic way of thinking. I mean, they are totally impractical.
All right, that's Jonathan. Thank you very much. I'll take more calls. 0891 104 208. Let me read you one or two SMSs here, Mr. Makwetu, and get your responses. All over and above the two calls that we've received. Here's an SMS from Spio in KZN who says, the same Auditor General and the Public Protector spend huge funds on consultants to come up with these reports. Your guests live in glass houses, careful of stones. That's Spio in KZN. Nick says, we are paying twice for the same job. Firstly, to incompetent idiot, and secondly, to a consultant. More good reason to get rid of affirmative action in BEE. That's according to Nick. Just these two SMSs and perhaps the two calls as well.
Right, thank you, Kolani. Let me deal with the one first that talks to consultants used by the Auditor General. This is exactly the point that we are making in our report, that we are not in any way advocating the elimination of consultants in the public sector, because they are a critical part in many respects of delivering the programs in government. From our point of view as the Auditor General, we do use these consultants, definitely. But the difference that we think we want to emphasize is that when we use them, we control them diligently. We make sure that the product and the price and the time it will take, the quality, as well as the discipline that is required to work with our auditees is absolutely spot on. To the extent that we do an evaluation post-delivery of who has worked for us, and where we find that there are significant gaps and issues identified, we chase them away. And that's the point that we are making. We are saying here that use them diligently so that you extract the value that you need to. Because in our case, for example, we've done an early assessment. If I just use an example of the areas that we evaluated in this audit, planning and appointment. When we plan our audits, we've got a finite product that we know we must audit across the state in all three areas of government. But we've come to a conclusion right up front that there is absolutely no way that we can have warm bodies on site, because there's one financial year end in government. So we'll end up employing people sitting permanently in our offices doing nothing. But we've made a choice, and we believe that choice is less expensive than it would have been for government had we gone the route of employing people full-time.
All right. So you get people to do what you can't employ full-time people to do.
And of course, it's an economic choice. We make that choice up front, and we say that in terms of the numbers, if we were to have people on board, it means that we must pay them all sorts of monies for the whole year. But the only time they're going to get busy is maybe 4 or 5 months of the year. So that will mean that the bulk of the time that you have them in your fixed employment is just wastage. Whereas a consultant comes to us for 6 weeks and they get the job done and they go back to their establishment.
All right. Hold your thoughts. We shall take our updates, come back and respond to the two callers and some more SMSs. There's also Joel in Durban, Mugone in Cape Town, Bruce in Randburg. They're holding to air their views and weigh in on this discussion. But let's go to Vabakshini Chetty now, because it is 8:30. Let's get the news headlines.
The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
It is 24 minutes before 9, and my guests on the Forum at 8, on the Forum at 8 this morning, South Africa's Deputy Auditor General, Kimi Makwetu. And the reason why we're talking to him this morning is because yesterday, the Auditor General of South Africa released a performance audit report on the use of consultants at selected national departments. And we're taking your thoughts then. A lot of money used, 102 billion rand since 2008, in fact, between 2008 and 2011. Let's hear your thoughts. Let me go to some SMSs. I'm going to go to the lines in a minute. if you don't mind, Deputy AG. Let me take this SMS here from Lee first, who says, NGOs do valuable work for needy people, yet thousands have just been deregistered because the AG considers them to be non-compliant. What an irony. That's according to Lee. I'm not sure if the Deputy AG will be able to attend to that one. But here's one from David, who says, consultants, a symptom of very poor skills and bloated, dysfunctional public service. Management echelons have grown exponentially versus expensive to taxpayers. In fact, very expensive to taxpayers, says David. How is it that there are all these problems with finance for health and schooling and other basic needs, but there seems to be enough to waste? Or is it a norm in government to allow wasteful expenditure until the AG tells them to stop? Says also another SMS. I work for the Department of Water Affairs, and the Deputy AG mentioned the Department of Water Affairs earlier on. Somebody says, I work for the Department of Water Affairs. I'm doing the same job as consultants, but I'm paid less. I'm contemplating joining consultation because of what is happening in my department. That also an SMS from somebody who did not sign it. There's no doubt that this is naked corruption that is deemed sophisticated by senior political office bearers, says another SMS. Let me just take one or two calls then, starting with Joel in Durban. Hello, Joel.
Hi, Zulani.
Hi.
Look, Minister Bladen Demandi often mentions the army of unemployed black graduates that are out there, and these are people that should be employed by state to gain experience so they can move on to the private sector. He often puts a racial spin on it that big business won't employ these graduates. It's ironic that his own government cannot find place for these graduates. They would rather give the jobs to one of their dumb aunties, nephews or cousins that are totally underqualified, and then you have to bring consultants in to do their jobs. And then the other issue I'd like to ask the AG, how many of these consultants are merely employed to oversee finances, and particularly finances in the municipalities, literally to stop the wholesale theft? Now, if the voters vote in councillors who are there to work in their interests and look after the cash, you wouldn't have to have consultants appointed merely to make sure the finances are managed. And when I talk about the finances being managed, merely to stop theft.
All right, that's Joel in Durban. Thank you. Is it Mukone or in Cape Town? Good morning.
Good morning. It's actually Mukena. How are you?
Mukena, thank you very much for your call. Hi, welcome.
Good. My comment specifically is that I don't think the speaker has drawn a distinction between administrators within government and professionals. And I say this particularly because my interaction with government is that it tends to be flooded with a number of officials who are not empowered to either be creative enough to make a difference, nor do they have the sort of technical infrastructure to offer the type of service that professionals do offer.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that this is conflated underneath the word consultant is highly problematic, because even if you put these controls and measures in place, the reality is that the type of software that's being used by professionals who are attending world conferences, who are being at the best in their field, it's very difficult to have those type of people within government because it's a different culture of government. It's not a creative space, it's a space of order and administration. Consultants are able to think out of the box, deliver quickly, and if it wasn't for these so-called consultants, things like the stadium and many other projects that we've achieved in the last couple of years would not have been done, because government administrators are not professionals, by and large.
Okay, fine. And I'm going to ask the Deputy AG to respond. But earlier on, he said that they are not necessarily saying that consultants must not be used, but it's a matter of using them where necessary. Okay.
I think so, but I think when the conversation starts to conflate to the issue of corruption, and when it begins to say that there's a possibility that all of these things can be handled in-house, that will create a bloated government, which is even more bloated than it currently is. What should be required is good administrators who are few in number, who actually strengthen the economy by building up small to medium enterprises, which are those consultants who can actually deliver the services.
Okay, thank you very much.
As opposed to trying to do everything in-house.
Thank you. I appreciate your point. Deputy AG?
Let me start with the last point made by the last speaker. I agree entirely with what the last speaker says. It's just unfortunate that many callers may not necessarily have had access to the report yet, but I think the points that the last speaker makes are exactly what we have observed in our report. We've actually even drawn distinction between the different categories of consultants. One of the things, for example, the last caller speaks about is typical specialized services that government has already decided they are not going to get people to do for them. So that's where the issue of professionals comes in. We have no fault with that. All we are saying is that those that are in administration, if they know that this is what needs to be done, better make sure that you get what you expect to get. And we are not saying that those people who are providing technical services that are unlikely to be within a department must be chased away. That's not what we are suggesting. All we are suggesting is that the levels of discipline and the comfort with which the money spent and the goods received ought to be the priority for those that are employed in government, in senior management. Those that are providing professional services, yes, because government ultimately will end up having to build big factories to manufacture things if they think they're going to do it themselves. There's no doubt about that. All we're saying is that let there be proper rigor to ensure that there is enough value achieved.
There was an SMS from somebody from the Water Affairs Department who says, I'm considering becoming a consultant because they get paid more than what I'm getting.
Is that an employee at Water Affairs?
According to the SMS, yes. But I suppose the point about it is that are you finding that even in terms of pay, they remain in these positions for a long time doing jobs that should be done by people who are permanently employed but getting paid a lot of money?
There are instances like that, Kolani, and we've recorded it in our report and said some of these are excessive in nature in terms of the payment, let alone the fact that the product, when it's delivered, it's sometimes not at an acceptable level in terms of what has been delivered. So there is that as well. I think that caller is spot on in saying that you see a lot more money being... Because some of these payments, unfortunately, go through the hands of people in your creditors department, in the department. They can see what is being paid and what it was for. So it's very clear that people internally in those areas can attest to some of the observations we've made.
Let's go back to the lines. Bruce in Randburg is a consultant himself. Good morning, Bruce.
Yeah, hi, Delani. I'm a software consultant, and I work in the private and public industry. First point is, almost every single company uses consultants to a certain degree. It's definitely not a form of corruption. What we typically do is we implement a system. We're involved in projects that have a lifespan, as your guest articulated. We implement the systems. We're involved in support. We train up the people, then you leave. And you get involved in specialized problems that might occur down the line. But the problem is if the consultants are there for too long and they're doing the work that the in-house skills are supposed to be doing, it then clearly defeats the point of what a consultant is, because you are more expensive. You're coming in doing specialized work, but you're not supposed to be there for long periods of time. And unfortunately, I see this more in the public industry than the private, where the consultants have almost semi-permanent job, a role in the company. And that's where I think you see these high costs that are skyrocketing.
All right, which is exactly the point that you are highlighting here, Deputy AG. He will come to you and respond to you in a minute. Len is in Cape Town. Hello, Len.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, welcome.
I want to come at this from a different angle. If you draw a comparison between private and government, the government sector, due to cadre deployment and the ANC's insane desire to place blacks wherever they can, we have a situation that's developed where people are deployed way beyond the level of their own incompetence. And this is going to be an ongoing thing virtually forever. And that is the major problem.
All right, let me ask the Deputy AG whether he picked up that evidence that people are that this may be a result of cadre deployment, of BEE, affirmative action, as people have implied on SMS. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kolani. The extent of our examination in reality goes as far as examining the processes that have been prescribed in terms of the prescripts that are set out by National Treasury, as well as the TPSA. And so there was no option in those prescripts, as we were following the tests that we were doing. There was no option to evaluate things like the last speaker is mentioning. I guess what the speaker is probably referring to is maybe the next level that could be done in this thing to really assess the intention behind bringing those services into those departments. We didn't do any work in that area, and so I'm not going to speculate about what the real intention for that was. But what we did was to elevate the facts, put them in a report, and engage with that particular reality so that anybody else can then interpret it.
Sure. Because on the back of that call by Len in Cape Town, there's an email from Yogi, also in Cape Town, who says, and you'll hear perhaps that there's a link between the two. He says, good morning. How many of these consultants are whites? I'm always hearing the whites and the DA moaning about wasteful expenditure, yet they might be the ones who are benefiting as consultants. We know that the majority of skills lie with the previously advantaged, namely whites and Indians to a lesser extent. Please ask the Deputy AG how many of these consultants are white and Indian. I suppose the answer would pretty much be the same, or maybe you'll answer it.
Yeah, I guess, it probably leans closer to what I said earlier on. And I guess the categorical answer there is that we did not do a demographic profile of the suppliers.
Right, some more emails. There's one from Bobby who says, big corporations get consultants from overseas, which they can charge exorbitant amounts. They supply the government with services that they don't need, because in government, consultants manage and they take more decisions. Before I continue with the calls, by the way, 0891104228, 0891104228, what are the recommendations?
Well, let me just deal with one or two questions, if you would allow me, for just a minute. The ones that were raised earlier on. There was a comment made earlier on by one caller regarding NGOs being non-compliant, and then the AG recommending them to be closed. We didn't get didn't get involved in that. I saw that in the news yesterday. I think it was an internally generated process within social development, so it was not linked to the AG's work at all. Secondly, there was a point made earlier regarding the finances in municipalities by consultants. Typically what the caller was saying was that, consultants are brought in to manage finances. What we are seeing is actually consultants brought in at the end when the municipality is struggling to put together a report. And so they are only involved in the reporting stage, whereas the municipality is responsible for managing their finances themselves. So when there's a messy situation, they will go out and find somebody who's going to put a set of financial statements for them. So this is one of the troubling issues as well, because the opportunity to manage the financial systems within the municipality, among others, is lost, because people are then running around trying to sometimes balance stuff that does not balance at the reporting stage. Coming to the recommendations, we've highlighted a number of areas that we believe will see some progress being made in this area. And we've looked at the role that senior management in the departments ought to play, and that is one, to provide proper financial management and control insofar as the issue of consulting services is concerned. We've also recommended that when the accounting officers report in their annual report to Parliament and all of that, there's got to be a specific focus given to this area so that it can be highlighted. And therefore, those that are playing oversight, whether in portfolio committees, whether in SCOPA and many other transversal control committees in Parliament and wherever they are, as well as audit committees, can give specific attention to this issue.
Interesting you talk about oversight, because I've also got on the line Dennis Bloom now, a member of Parliament. Good morning to you, Mr. Bloom.
Good morning, Tolani, and good morning to the Deputy AG.
Yeah, hi. Welcome.
Tolani, you know that the AG took my words. You know, that is the crux. People try to point finger at the Auditor General to say what have he done and what have. But the problem is with the oversight bodies, Parliament, Portfolio Committee, select committees must do the job. There's annual reports. All the time, these things of consultants are pointed out in the annual reports. What is the portfolio committees and the select committees doing?
They probably need consultants themselves.
Sorry?
They probably need consultants themselves.
They need consultants. And a member of Parliament and the committee need consultants. Then
I don't know. I saw some SMS.
No. Then they are not supposed to be representatives of the people.
But you would know. You would know. You're a member of Parliament. Why are they not doing the oversight work that they're supposed to?
Let me tell you, Tolan. You see, I am from a chairpersonship of correctional services.
Yeah.
We have pointed these things out many a times. But the problem is, the minister is the boss of the portfolio committee. When people are pointing out these things, you are being labeled as an opposition, as a counter-revolutionary. I can tell you, many of the people in the ANC, in the portfolio committees, want to point out these things, but they are scared because they are going to be labeled as counter-revolutionary opposition and what. I am from there. I know.
And you know, it's interesting you say that, because you were the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. One of the highlights, if you will, maybe the lowlights of this report is that the Correctional Services Department, at some point, there was a consultant appointed to manage other consultants in that department. Can you believe it?
Yes, it is true. Because we have pointed it out many times in our meetings. When we had, you can go to the Parliamentary Monitoring Group minutes. It is there. You will see what Dennis Bloom has said and other members of the Cindy Chukunga is now a deputy minister. She has pointed these things out. Many of our people have pointed these things out in correctional services.
But you see, it's very serious what you're saying, because then if you're feeling, disempowered as a member of parliament, you're disempowered. Yes. Who else can do these things? Who else can make a difference? It's a very serious problem. People have become praise singers. People must not point out wrong things. They are scared because they are going to lose their seats. They are going to be called to Lituli House and to the Chief Whip's office. It's a very serious problem. Okay.
It's this thing. 102 billion rand. It's not child's play. It's
all right, Dennis Bloom. Thank you. Dennis Bloom, he's a member of COPE. And Mahuro in Cape Town, hello.
I'm referring to a specific case that in a small village in the Cape is taking place. A certain project to control small river is being given to consultant. The cost resulting from the proposal of this consultant is tremendously over other alternative solution which have been done by local professionals. When I say tremendously, I'm talking a difference from 1 to 10. It means something. I, together with other professionals, I am suggesting with the ratepayer, then we'll claim that because of the inefficiency of the proposal of the consultant, we will claim that we can plan and make our own proposal. In few words, I am proposing the old-fashioned autonomy, which was functioning much better. I would like the opinion if this would be possible, in which way from your guests.
All right, Mahuro, thank you. Let me read one or two emails, then my guest will respond. There is an email from Olile who says, it seems to me that the problem is employing people who lack proper skills to do the job required, which is a problem I would want to attribute to Jobs for Pals phenomenon. My question is, would the establishment of an independent employment agency for all public sector jobs be, or to ensure the right people for the jobs are employed? So I suppose that's the suggestion here. Establish an independent employment agency for all public sector jobs. We'll hear if the Deputy AG has a view on that. Just talking about those proposals, I saw one earlier on, somebody who says, Deputy AG, we must go the Netherlands way and use retired consultants for less money. Retired consultants for less money, not retired people as consultants. Do you follow?
Yeah. Thank you, Kulani. The issue regarding the personnel in government, we are aware that the Public Service Commission, towards the end of last year, engaged the Portfolio Committee in Parliament on certain plans that they want to put in place, which address not just what we've picked up here, but a whole range of issues pertaining to the staff as well as professionalizing the public service. And this is also a similar goal that we have seen that the Department of Public Service and Administration is pursuing. So if all of those things can be allowed to filter through the system and there's enough courage to address some of the issues that the callers have raised, I think it will take us to the next level. At least we'll be able to examine issues, knowing that the people that are doing the job on a day-to-day basis provide sufficient value for the money invested in them. As far as the issue of the Netherlands and the retired consultants, I really have not much to say about that, and I guess it will probably something that gets couched into the overall plans that are there by the likes of the Public Service Administration and the Commission.
I'm wrapping up, but I would like to know, you've now got this report that is pretty much shocking the country. What happens next? What do you do with this report?
Well, obviously, this year, before we finalized this report, towards the end of last year, we went around to all the affected portfolio committees, chairs, to brief them that we are in the final stages of this report. And we had a very strong undertaking from all of those structures in Parliament that 2013, when they open the first sessions in Parliament, they are going to take steps to ensure that even in portfolio committees there's sufficient engagement by those that are affected by this. We are also encouraged by the chair of chairs in Parliament, who has also made a similar undertaking. So ours is really going to go as far as providing this report and encouraging structures of oversight to do what we have recommended. Beyond that, it's the responsibility of other people.
Except, of course, having heard what Dennis Bloom says about the structures that are supposed to conduct oversight and the state of those structures, then it may very well be one of those reports that collect dust in some shelf somewhere.
We can never give up. This is part of what we must pursue on a day-to-day basis. Otherwise, there will be no reason for us to exist among others, including other institutions for that matter.
One thing, sorry, I forgot to find out whether the Mahuro was asking a specific question, the guy from Cape Town. The last caller that we took there, we had a specific case in Cape Town. Anyway, perhaps in relation to those specific cases like Mahuro's, what can people do? How can they get in touch with the AG's office, perhaps, if they want to specifically get answers about specific cases that are happening?
Well, they can contact our office directly, but in terms of getting much deeper insight into the substance of what's contained in this report, they can also access it on our website.
I think that's more important here.
www.agsa.co.za.
www.agsa.co.za.
Yes.
Even in terms of the AGSA, by the way, somebody says, Kimi must first talk about the high turnover of staff and outsourcing of work at the AGSA before pointing fingers at others.
Well, high turnover of staff in our office, we have no experience of that. The only experience we have is one of people when come the end of the year, they decide to go and pursue other things. So people do leave organizations like everybody else.
But you have no staff shortage issues.
The point of the matter, I think, Xolani, is that we put a peg on the ground here and said, after we've done a thorough analysis of our deliverables as an office, we are going to limit the extent of consulting services for delivering our work to no more than 20%. And that was based on a very clear analysis, and that's what guides us. So whether people come and go, we will still use them because we believe there's a rational basis for doing it.
Kimi Makwetu is the Deputy Auditor General of South Africa. I really have got to thank you very much for your time. Thanks indeed for the hour. Much appreciated. I also would like to thank the team who put it all together for us this day. Our producers, Tracy Bumgard, Sibongile Nhlapo, Wisane Makubele, and Mbulelo Makhubu. Senior producer, Lungile Mabaso. Forum at 8 producers, Jake Mukoma and Mandi Samtselu. Technical producer, Mark Preller. Chief producer, Budzilu Koto. Executive producers, Busi Chan and Obrasichia. My name is Xolani Gwala. I shall be back for you on Monday, 6 to 9 here on SF. Good luck to Bafana on Sunday. Coming up then at 9, the news, and of course, Vuyo Mbuli is on Morning Talk. Cheers from all of us. Talk 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 cheers from all of us.